Galatians 6:12 and 13. Those people who are trying to compromise the gospel by forcing you to circumcise are doing it for fear of the Jews. Compromising the gospel. They're adding legalism to the gospel. This is done today by compromising. You have to do this and Christ. And also compromise by saying, well, this ain't, God don't see this as sin. This is the biggest compromise today, belittling what sin is and because of God's love. And so we still have this compromise out there today that try to compromise the gospel to please others. This isn't new. So the Jews wanted people to be circumcised. It was their covenant. In fact, it was a covenant only. It was a sign of the earthly covenant, Abrahamic blessing. And the Jewish people held themselves high above everyone. So everyone who wanted to, these are the Jewish people within the Christian church that are forcing this issue. They're saying, well, we're circumcised. You got to be, because this and this. In fact, this ritual law was done away with when Christ died because we're all unclean. The Jewish people that were arguing this were circumcised, so they considered themselves clean. The fact is, they weren't clean. They needed Christ to be clean. And this is why the ritual law was done away with, because it isn't by anything we can do or that makes us clean. It's only by Him. All of us are unclean. They don't want to come right out and say that the cross of Christ doesn't require circumcision because they'd be persecuted by their own countrymen. So they're kind of tiptoeing around this. They're Jewish people, and so we see how the Jewish, non-Christian Jews are kind of picking this fight and influencing it. As Christians, oftentimes when we have world influences in things, it causes trouble within the church, within our faith. The world has no positive influence in the church, and we should not allow it to influence the church. We should be an influence to the world. The world's morals never influence the church because it corrupts it. When the world creeps in, their morals isn't biblical based. So why would we reason with what they have to say? Why would we reason by listening to what others think when we have what the Word says? I stick to the Word. Also, this was causing division. The outside world was causing division to the church. This is exactly what wanted to be done. This would have divided church, put a real foothold to stop the church from doing what the work it was doing. This is a good tactic for Satan. Therefore, it's not something God wanted. He wants us to be united in our faith and service to Him. The fact is, they were afraid of persecution. When we serve the Lord, we should not fear persecution, but have a respect, a reverence, a fear in some form of Him. Reverence and fear is closely linked. Verse 13. Have you noticed that those who urge you to be circumcised are not consistent? That's because they're using outside influence. It ain't convicted on their heart. They're doing it out of fear. When it's convicted, it's going to be consistent. When it's God-led, it will be consistent. This is one of the things Paul's pointing out to show the inconsistency. Is there inconsistency? This isn't of God because God's consistent. If it was, they'd be consistent about this. Many of them don't keep all the Jewish laws themselves. So circumcision was a sign showing keep the law, God's covenant. If you broke God's covenant in one place, then you broke the whole law, we see from Scripture. So for them to not keep all the Jewish laws, then for them to argue circumcision was a pointless factor. So he's making 2 points to say, well, they're not consistent, so it's not of God, and they're not even keeping all the law, so they're not even speaking as righteous men themselves. Why then are you putting so much emphasis on the importance of circumcision? Okay, he doesn't point out what parts of the law they're breaking. What he's saying is you're breaking part of the law. Then why hold this one so high? Because the Jewish people, the non-Christian Jewish people, could held themselves higher because these people weren't circumcised. So this Jewish Christians may be urging it so that the non-believers see them as equal. And Paul does state this in reason why he has had us circumcised, but this isn't the issue they're pointing out. They're doing it out of fear, not out of a reason to witness. Clearly, for Jewish people to be in the church of Galatia, the influence of those that had not been circumcised was something. Otherwise, they'd be all Gentile Christians, and this wouldn't become an issue. Clearly, there's enough of them to make it an issue, which showed that it wasn't an issue of evangelism. It was an issue of fear. And we shouldn't allow fear of what the world thinks to cause us to, as it says in verse 12, compromise the gospel. They not only want to avoid persecution, but they also like to boast about how many Gentile Christians they have persuaded to be circumcised. So they're using this as a tactic to boast and avoid persecution by the Jewish people. Because as long as they're practicing a Jewish form of faith, then they're not persecuted. If we as the church decide to look like the world, we're not going to be persecuted. But why would we want to live like the world when we need to live like Christ? And let's not boast in that. Let's boast in Him. Because this is what we're supposed to do.